Mississippi, the Element Well Studios relocated to West Point, Mississippi. We're at the Sally Kate Winters Family Services. And joining us now, the Executive Director of Sally Kate Winters Family Services, Sheila Brand. Sheila, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, so give us a little overview of the organization's mission, and a little bit about the history of the organization.
Okay, great. Well, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is kind of why we're here with SuperTalk today. We do a lot of awareness on child abuse prevention during the month of April. But Sally Kate Winters Family Services opened our doors in September of 1990 as an emergency shelter for kids in the foster care system due to child abuse, neglect, and family violence. Through the years, our agency has grown to evolve into services for runaway and homeless youth, as well as Children's Advocacy Center services for felony child abuse cases, really garnering a lot of relationships with law enforcement and child protection services and the district attorney's office and other professionals and victim advocates who work with victims of child abuse and neglect.
Was there a particular incident that sort of served as a catalyst for the formation of Sally Kate Winters?
Yes. Actually, in the late 80s, early 90s, because there was not a safe haven for kids in our local community, if child protection services or law enforcement took kids into custody in the middle of the night, they were being housed at the local jail overnight until they could place them in a facility that would be located outside of our community. There was Cassandra Smith, who was a volunteer deputy that kind of realized that was happening with children. She contacted Martha Winters, and that's kind of how the board for Sally Kate Winters Memorial Children's Home developed. And through the years, as the needs of our communities changed, then our board elected to expand our services and modify our original name.
How do children, how do you receive them? What causes them to come in contact with you and come into your care?
So if a hotline report is made to the Mississippi Child Abuse Hotline and Child Protection Services go out and deem necessary to remove the child from that environment, typically an emergency shelter is where they go. It's a short-term placement that allows Child Protection Services to work with the family, identify other relatives, or identify a foster home that can take care of those children. So a very short-term 30 to 45-day placement, and that allows us to offer stability, safety for the kids, and then identify any other needs that they might have before they go to a more permanent setting. Our Runaway and Homeless Youth Program works directly with kids on a voluntary basis. So a child could come here in the middle of the night. A school counselor could identify that a child was homeless and make a referral to us. And so we have 4 shelter beds available for them as well.
Okay, so you work and I assume coordinate directly with Department of Human Services, CPS.
Yes.
In your efforts, but you're not a government entity, and in fact, you rely on private funding.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's right. We're a private nonprofit. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and my brief exposure in working with not CPS but DHS in general is they're overwhelmed. They seem to be not have sufficient staff to deal with all the caseload that they have. I had 2 foster children a long time ago, and that just anecdotally seemed to be the case. So seems like this organization sort of fills a void and serves a very valuable role in just trying to take care of children that come from these environments.
Well, if you think about it, in 2019, there are a little over 33,000 hotline reports for suspected child abuse and neglect in the state of Mississippi. That's a lot of reports for one entity to be responsible. Only about 80% of those reports required an investigation, but that's still close to 30,000. And so they're not only working with the family and foster homes, but our focus is the child and kind of determining what that child needs for stability and providing that so that then Child Protection Services can work on the investigation or work on, helping the family get their lights turned back on or beds in the home so the children can be returned.
Yeah. How big is the geographic area that you serve?
So our primary focus is 5 counties surrounding Clay County for a lot of our programs, but we take kids from all over the state, particularly our runaway and homeless youth. The shelter beds, there's only 2 shelters in the whole state for runaway and homeless youth, and those are kids not involved in the state foster care system. And so we're Meridian North, and then the Vicksburg shelter serves, Meridian South. For our transitional living program that works with runaway and homeless youth, we're the only program that works with that population in the state. So we serve kids from all 82 counties if we receive a referral for them.
And there's some legal hurdles that have to be jumped through as well. Is that correct? When you have a child in an endangered situation in a home, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but you've got to get some authority. Is that correct?
That's
from judges?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So we do a lot of work with youth court or chancery judges.
Yeah.
Of course, our felony child abuse cases that come through the Children's Advocacy Center, a lot of work with the criminal justice system. So we deal with all 3 court systems, depending on, the individual needs of that particular youth.
If there is such a thing, what's a typical case? What's a typical situation?
I would say about half or more of the kids that come into the shelter program are, victims of neglect. You have parents who can't provide food and the basic necessities for those kids, or they live in an environment that's really not a good environment for adults or children. Mm-hmm. And then we do see a lot of severe physical and sexual abuse cases that come through the Children's Advocacy Center program, but those children don't all end up in the foster care system. Sometimes they are placed with a relative, or maybe the abuser leaves the home, and so the children can stay with the non-abusive parent.
Is it typically the child that calls attention to this, the situation, or is it a friend, a relative, kind of all the above?
It's really all the above, and so part of Child Abuse Prevention Month is really focusing on the mandated reporting laws in the state of Mississippi, and we're all mandated reporters. If we identify a suspicious or we feel like a child is in harm in any way, it's our duty to make a report to the hotline. Not that we have to be sure, not that we have to investigate ourselves, but we leave that work then to Child Protection Services and law enforcement to really do the investigative work to determine if that child is indeed in danger and what needs to be done. But we're all mandated reporters. Yeah. It's our responsibility to offer safety and protect children in our communities. So whether it's the school counselor or the teacher, that was kind of a big deal when COVID was going on. You saw a huge drop in hotline reports because they were not involved in the organizations outside of the home. Yeah. And for, 12 to 18 months, they were in an abusive environment, and we saw increased severe physical abuse during that time, and that those numbers really increased as the pandemic kind of slowed and families and children were getting out and involved in things again. Those severe physical abuse cases kind of came to the surface and started coming in.
And the goal is to provide some sort of temporary shelter and stability and ultimately place them in a proper home. Is that right?
Yes. So we don't actually do the placement.
Yeah.
We just
DHS does that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We just do the work of stabilizing the child, identifying their initial needs, getting them ready for that permanency piece, so that they can be successful when they leave us.
Yeah.
When you think about it, if a child is removed in the middle of the night and comes into our shelter program, they are with complete strangers, and how traumatic that is for them. And so us helping them work through the trauma of being removed, but also the trauma of either the abuse or neglect that resulted in removing them from the home. So a lot of issues that have to be addressed before they're ready to go into another environment and be successful in that environment.
And then your staff, are they permanent, full-time employees, volunteers, combination?
We have 27 full-time employees, 25 full-time, 2 part-time. Okay. That, our shelter program is staffed with 2 people awake 24/7, which is a huge piece of our budget, is providing that. But then we also have the professional staff of therapists, licensed social workers to kind of also work on that trauma piece. So a combination of professional and direct care staff. But volunteers are a huge piece of what we do too, and couldn't do our work without them.
You're great. Sheila, thanks for coming on and giving us that overview of the organization. We got other folks associated as well coming on the program later. It's an honor to be here, and thanks for all the great work.
Thank you.
We'll take a break right here on Middays. We're in the Element Well Studios at Sally Kate Winters Family Services, West Point, Mississippi. Stay with us.